No one in early American performance expected Pontiac to ignite a revolution. Yet one small, almost accidental decision created the machine that changed everything and unknowingly birthed the muscle car era. A mid-sized body, a giant heartbeat, and a rule Pontiac chose to bend rather than fear. And to everyone watching on American Muscle Soul, I hope you are feeling calm and well as we revisit one of the most defining stories in automotive history. The early 1960s rolled across America with the deep thunder of big block giants shaking every main street from coast to coast. Back then, speed was a privilege reserved for long and heavy machines that ruled the highways. Cars like the Chevy Impala 409 and the Ford Galaxy 406 carried enough steel to anchor a small boat, and drivers believed real power lived only in engines the size of oil drums. If you wanted to go fast in that era, you needed something big enough to block out the sun. That was the rule written in the minds of every young gearhead. But beneath the glow of neon diners and the pulse of rock and roll, the mood of young America was shifting. Kids wanted something lighter, cheaper, rebellious enough to match the music blasting through their radios. They wanted a car that felt alive, a machine that did not need size to be exciting. And as their taste changed, Detroit felt a quiet pressure to evolve, even if corporate rulebooks seemed unwilling to budge. Inside Pontiac's engineering rooms, an idea flickered that almost slipped past without notice. What if a mid-sized car, smaller by hundreds of pounds than the heavyweight kings, carried the heart of a full-blown V8 bruiser? What if power did not have to be chained to mass? It was a simple question, accidental in tone but explosive in potential. No one knew it yet, but that tiny spark was about to ignite a revolution that would reshape American performance forever. That spark would have died quietly if not for the pressure Pontiac felt in those early years. Before the world knew the letters GTO, the division was fighting to stay relevant. Sales were softening. Rival divisions inside General Motors were catching momentum, and the young crowd Pontiac wanted was drifting toward flashier machines. Yet Pontiac was bound to a corporate rule that threatened to strangle every bold idea before it could breathe. General Motors had declared that no mid-sized car could carry an engine larger than 300 cubic inches. The intention was to protect the company's own lineup hierarchy and prevent internal competition. On paper it seemed reasonable. In practice, it locked the doors on innovation and left engineers staring at possibilities they were forbidden to touch. John DeLorean and his small circle of restless thinkers refused to let the story end there. They studied the rulebook line by line until one quiet detail stood out. The restriction applied only to standard equipment, not to optional packages. And in that overlooked gap, a path appeared. By offering the 389 cubic inch V8 as an option rather than base equipment, Pontiac could deliver the performance young drivers craved without technically breaking any rule. They were not trying to spark a revolution. They were simply trying to survive. Yet survival sometimes demands boldness, and boldness often becomes the first step toward history. With the loophole revealed, Pontiac needed a platform capable of turning the idea into reality. The Pontiac Tempest seemed like an unlikely candidate. It was a practical mid-sized machine built for families and commutes, a car meant to blend quietly into the rhythm of everyday life. Nothing about its tidy proportions or modest presence suggested it could shake the foundations of Detroit's performance world. But John DeLorean saw the Tempest differently. Its compact chassis carried less weight than the big cruisers that dominated the era, giving it a natural liveliness. Its simple suspension layout could be strengthened to handle more power. Its balance made it nimble in ways full-sized cars could never replicate. To DeLorean and his team, the Tempest was not a commuter. It was a blank page with enormous potential. So they stripped away what was unnecessary and reinforced what mattered. Their focus shifted from comfort to character, from refinement to raw attitude. While Oldsmobile and Buick clung to traditional luxury, Pontiac leaned into nerve and simplicity. Piece by piece, the Tempest transformed. It did not yet look like a revolutionary machine, but it no longer resembled the polite family car it had been. Under Pontiac's hands, it was becoming something new, something that Detroit was not prepared to face. Once the platform was chosen, Pontiac made the move that would define an era. Dropping the 389 cubic inch V8 into the Tempest shell created a combination the industry had never seen. In larger Pontiacs, the engine was confident and strong. In this lighter mid-sized body, it became explosive. The moment test drivers heard it breathe inside the tighter engine bay, They knew the car's personality had shifted forever. The triple carburetor setup fed the engine like three hungry lungs, letting it inhale deeply and roar with a tone that felt more rebellious than refined. The 4-speed manual allowed drivers to command the torque with precision, launching the car forward with each firm shift. The rear axle dug into the pavement, revealing traction and eagerness that surprised even seasoned engineers. Against the giants of the time, the picture changed. The Dodge Polara 440 had brute strength, but carried far more weight. The Chevy Impala 409 had prestige, but lacked the Tempest's agility. Pontiac's creation delivered the same punch as those heavy hitters, but used every pound more efficiently. It was not brute force for the sake of mass. It was controlled aggression delivered through smart proportions. A small car with a big heart was no longer a theory. It was a living machine, and it was hungry. When the GTO finally hit the pavement, the streets felt its presence before Detroit understood its significance. Quarter-mile stretches that had long been ruled by full-sized bruisers suddenly faced a challenger that looked far too ordinary to be taken seriously. But when the light dropped, the 389 roared, the tires snapped for grip, and the mid-sized Pontiac surged forward with a confidence that stunned every witness. Magazine testers expecting a mild-mannered Tempest climbed out with wide eyes. They described torque that felt immediate, acceleration that hit with muscle more than finesse, and a sense of urgency normally found only in far pricier machines. The GTO did not ease into speed. It attacked it. Picture a late-night boulevard. You are driving a heavyweight Galaxy, or an Impala, certain of your place atop the food chain. Then a smaller Pontiac pulls alongside, growls once, and leaves you staring at taillights. That moment echoed across drag strips, parking lots, and small towns. It signaled a shift in the unspoken rules of the road. Young drivers realized they finally had a machine that fought above its weight. Pontiac had given them more than performance. It had given them permission to challenge the giants. Pontiac expected the GTO to be nothing more than a niche offering, a fun side project, a rebellious little option package that might bring in a few younger buyers. Their most optimistic forecast called for maybe 5,000 cars in the first year. But once the word spread from drag strips to college campuses to small-town cruising nights, demand swelled faster than anyone in Detroit could track. By the time the year closed, more than 32,000 buyers had stormed dealerships asking for the same thing. They wanted the car that was humbling full-sized bruisers twice its size. What stunned the industry was not just the number but the type of customers walking in. These were young drivers with modest budgets and big dreams. The GTO was priced within reach, yet delivered the kind of excitement that had previously required stepping up to large and expensive models. It offered attitude without pretense, noise without apology, and speed without breaking the bank. America had never seen a formula like that before. Inside rival divisions, panic began to ripple. Chevrolet rushed to strengthen the Chevelle SS. Oldsmobile scrambled to refine the 442. Buick added muscle to the GS line. Even Chrysler divisions took notice as Dodge and Plymouth prepared their own mid-sized heavy hitters. Pontiac had not just launched a successful car. They had fired the opening shot of a horsepower war that would reshape the entire decade. What started as a loophole experiment had turned into a nationwide obsession. As the 60s roared into their golden years, it became clear that the GTO was no longer just a popular model. It had become a cultural landmark. Kids taped its pictures to bedroom walls, bands sang about it, magazines praised it as the new face of American performance. Pontiac had accidentally tapped into the pulse of an entire generation, crafting a machine that captured the spirit of youth in metal and gasoline. What made the GTO unforgettable was not simply its speed, but the attitude it carried. It looked ordinary enough to slip through traffic unnoticed, yet one tap of the throttle revealed a voice that demanded respect. The impact spread fast. Every major automaker now chased the same magic. Mid-sized bodies, stuffed with oversized V8 engines, became the new normal. That formula would give birth to icons like the Chevy Chevelle SS 454, the Dodge Coronet RT 440, and the Plymouth Roadrunner 383. All of them owed their existence to one Pontiac that dared to question the old rulebook. But with greatness came fragility. Many early GTO models were raced hard, wrecked, stripped, or lost to time. What remains today are survivors cherished by collectors who understand the significance of the car's origin story. They know this machine was not engineered to become a legend. It stumbled into legend, because it reflected the wild, unapologetic energy of its era. Pontiac had not intended to create a movement, yet the movement arrived anyway. Looking back now, it is almost unbelievable that a simple option package on a modest, mid-sized Pontiac could realign the entire course of American performance. Yet that is exactly what the GTO accomplished. It took a quiet loophole in the General Motors rulebook and turned it into a nationwide awakening. It proved that power did not need to ride in a giant steel battleship, and that excitement could come from a car priced within reach of young drivers chasing freedom on the open road. In doing so, Pontiac unintentionally delivered the blueprint that would define muscle cars for years to come. The true magic of the GTO was not just the 389 engine or the triple carburetors or the 4-speed gear shifts that barked through every stoplight. Its magic came from the way it made people feel. It carried the raw pulse of youth culture, the rebellious streak of rock and roll, and the thrill of discovering that the rules of the road were not as fixed as everyone believed. It was not engineered to be a symbol. It became one because it spoke directly to those who wanted more than transportation. They wanted identity. Decades later, the legacy still stands. Every restored GTO, every surviving street legend, every muscle car born in its shadow reminds us of one truth. Sometimes, history changes not through planning, but through one bold idea that refuses to stay quiet. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more stories that shape the machines we love, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel American Muscle Soul. Your support helps us bring more real engineering history to life.